Welcome to The Quiet Record, where every place has a story. Some are written down, others are left behind, waiting for someone to listen. There is a place on the edge of the Hudson Bay where the land seems to hesitate, where the river widens, slows, and empties into gray water and wind. No roads lead here now, no lights, no voices, just wreckage, and the quiet weight of plans that never came true. This is Port Nelson, a town that once meant to be Canada's northern gateway to the world. Instead, it became a footnote, and then a ghost. Port Nelson sits at the mouth of the Nelson River, where fresh water meets salt and ambition once met reality. In the early 1900s, nearly 1,000 people lived here, workers, engineers, families, all drawn by the promise that this would become the great part of the Canadian North. But long before concrete and steel arrived, this place already had a story, one written in storms, fur, and fragile first claims. In 1612, English explorer Thomas Button sailed into these waters after being battered by storms. Here at the river's mouth, he buried the master of the ship, a man named Nelson, and in that moment of loss, the place took its name, Port Nelson. It wasn't found with celebration or ceremony. It began with a grave and the quiet assertion that this land could be claimed. Through the 1600s and beyond, fur traders recognized what this river offered, a route deep into the interior of the continent. Indigenous peoples, especially the Swampy Cree and Assiniboine, already knew these waters well. They used the Nelson and nearby rivers as highways, moving goods, stories, and survival itself. European traders followed their knowledge, but not always their wisdom. The Hudson Bay Company did establish a presence here, but the Nelson River worked against them. Fast currents, heavy silt, difficult navigation. Just to the south, an easier route existed, and that decision shifted history. Trade consolidated at York Factory, leaving Port Nelson important, but never essential. 3 centuries later, Canada tried again. In 1912, the federal government needed a northern port to ship prairie grain to the world. Port Nelson was chosen over other options. Construction exploded into the wilderness. Docks and warehouses, rail plans stretching north, a man-made island harbor pushed into the river, a massive 17-span steel bridge connecting it all. On paper, Port Nelson was unstoppable, but the river didn't care about paper. Silt clogged the harbor, storms battered unfinished structures, fires, accidents, labor shortages, redesigns, one problem after another. Then came the First World War. Funding vanished. Workers left. Political support evaporated. By 1918, everything stopped. Port Nelson, once Canada's great northern hope, was abandoned mid-construction. Even its own chief engineer would later call the project a mistake. The railway never arrived, and in 1927, the government made its choice. The future moved north to Churchill. Tracks were laid, ships followed. History continued, just not here. Port Nelson was left exactly where it stood, half built, half forgotten, and completely silent. Today, only fragments remain, rusting metal, collapsed structures, a wrecked dredger sitting where ships were meant to dock. But stories linger, oral histories recorded, decades later, tell of Cree families who lived and worked here, people who watched the world arrive, stall, and leave again. Port Nelson didn't die suddenly. It simply stopped being needed. Port Nelson isn't a ghost town because people failed. It's a ghost town because the future chose a different path. This was a place built on certainty, on the belief that nature could be corrected, redirected. But the river had its own plans, and when those plans didn't align with ours, the silence moved in. Thank you for spending a few moments here with me. If this place spoke to you, I hope you'll join me again as we explore another forgotten corner and the stories they still hold.